So one of the things that we do talk about on this show are ballot measures and ballot initiatives. And we have moved on to New York. So we're covering the results for 2023. And we're now in New York. For the state of New York, you have to know that New York does not allow its voters the option to place initiatives on the ballot, be they to pass or repeal their own laws or ratify their own amendments into the New York State Constitution. There's a note here from Roger says, although we'll see about that. Only the legislature can pass laws independent of voter involvement and place initiatives on the ballot using a legislative referred constitutional amendment for voters to ratify amending the legislative initiatives within the New York Constitution. So we will finish up New York on Thursday, but I did want to go ahead and start the intro to that. But this is another way that you can actually have some type of direct democracy in this country. You can vote for representatives and hope that they represent you. Most of the time, I would argue they don't. Or if you live in a ballot initiative state, you can actually put forth some of these measures on the ballot, or just by going and voting for them. That's your way of actually voting, having that direct democracy where there's a question on the ballot and you vote for that question. No representative in between you and that question. And so I think that's a power that some of us are just not utilizing. And I think that if you live in a ballot initiative state, you got to at least go vote for these. I know a lot of you don't want to vote for the president, but if you live in a BI state, you definitely want to show up and vote for those ballot measures. That's very important. And they've gone very far here for people. I know in my state, in Massachusetts, and it's not just blue states. So we're getting closer and closer towards July, which is when we'll start to cover the 2024 ballot measures that will be on the ballot for this November. I talk about ballot measures, ballot initiatives on this show because, again, with all the corruption that happens in our federal government and the lack of power that we have with the federal government, there are some things that we can do locally, especially those of us that live in ballot initiative states. So the New York ballot initiative for 2023, this is the result of those two initiatives. And then it will be around June, we'll start the 2024 ballot initiatives that are going to be on the ballot for November. Going back to New York, we're going to dive in here. New York Proposal 1, remove debt limit on small city school districts amendment. A yes vote supported this amendment to eliminate the constitutional debt limit for small city school districts, which amounted to 5% of the average full value of the last 5 years' property tax rolls within the district. This was ratified by 64.34%. All right, it goes into say, how did this amendment change? It says the debt limit previously amounted to 5% of the average full value of the last 5 years' property tax rolls within the district. The measure also removed language from the Constitution excluding debt contracted for educational purposes for small cities. What a mess, man. Who supported this? The New York State the New York State United Teachers Union supported this. Some of the organizations, the Conference of Big Five School Districts, New York State PTA, New York State School Boards Association, to name a few. One of the arguments made is that the tighter restrictions on indebtedness by small city school districts are a relic of a time when there were many more disparities in state prescribed financial practices across types of school districts. Differences in debt limits and building aid offsets place small city school districts at a severe disadvantage in maintaining and improving school facilities and in addressing health and safety needs. The impact falls heavily upon the students from economically disadvantaged backgrounds. There was no money spent to support or oppose this measure. So typically, whichever one of these will have the most money, that's typically the way that the measure goes. Typically, that's how it works, but there wasn't any money spent to support or oppose it. And the last one here, New York Proposal 2, include indebtedness for sewage facilities amendment. A yes vote supported allowing municipalities to exclude from their constitutional debt limits indebtedness for the construction or reconstruction of sewage facilities for an additional 10 years. 2024, to 2034. This was also ratified by 68%. What does this actually do? It goes on to say, under the New York Constitution, state municipalities had a limit of how much debt could be incurred. It goes on to say, Article 8, Section 4 of the Constitution set the debt limit as a percentage of the 5-year average full valuation of taxable property within a municipality. The percentage varied by municipality. With the approval of Amendment 5 in 1963, debt incurred from the construction or improvement of sewage facilities was exempt from this constitutional debt limit. Now, the thing about this with the sewage, anytime, for those of us that live in the cities, because I'm in the Boston area here, and for those who lived in New York City, it makes me nervous when I hear them talking about money in reference to sewage, because the reality is you need to have sewage treatment. You need to, this is not an area where you want to cut costs. And I've heard that, Mayor Adams has actually been wanting to cut costs in reference to like trash collection in New York City, which I think is insane. Like, how are you going to decrease the number of rodents in New York City if you're not picking up the trash consistently as you should? So there's that. In other words, I don't know if any of you have ever been to New York City, but I've lived in New York City, and I don't know if you've been there or lived there during the summer, but during the summertime, New York City can smell a little something, It can smell a little something. So the last thing you want to do is limit how many times you are picking up the trash. So the sewage thing with the money, it makes me a little bit nervous. It goes on to say here who supported this, William Comrade, that state assembly. And one of the arguments is the need and rationale for the debt exclusion cited in 1963, and each subsequent extension remains relevant and valid today. Local government finances continue to be strained by the need to repair or replace aging sewer infrastructure. Indeed, the urgent need for improvements and upgrades to municipal sewer facilities is well documented as an ongoing concern for local governments. And there was no money that was spent to support or oppose this measure. And that, ladies and gentlemen, are the New York initiatives that were ratified for 2023. Yeah, the whole sewage thing does make me kind of nervous.